The second step of factoring is to count the number of terms. After we have taken out a greatest common factor, next we want to count the number of terms because that's going to tell us how different things will factor. If there are four or more terms, we're going to do a process called factoring by grouping. For instance, with the problem that is here, notice first there's nothing common to every term. There are a couple of A's up here on the front and some B's back here on the back. We have two X's, we've got a couple of Y's, but there's nothing part of every single term. So I first looked for a common factor and there wasn't one. Next, we've noticed that there are four terms, and for us that's going to mean factoring by grouping. Usually, we'll put together the front two terms in a set of parentheses and also the back two terms in a set of parentheses. We don't have to do it this way. Sometimes we'll group three terms together and leave one out. Sometimes we'll need to move terms around in order to make our groups work out properly. But for this one, let's group together the first two terms in a set of parentheses, as I've done here, and the back two terms in a set of parentheses like I've done here. Now, notice in the front set of parentheses, there's an A that's part of each of these terms. So I can factor that A out. When I factor the A out, it leaves an X plus Y. Likewise, on the back, there's a B that's common. When I factor that B out, it also leaves an X plus Y. Since X plus Y is now part of each of the things that are left, we could factor X plus Y out of them as well. When I take the X plus Y out, dividing each part by X plus Y, it leaves an A from the front and it leaves a B from the back. So here is our factored form. Notice that the order does not matter. We can write it in whichever order we prefer. It makes more sense to me for the X plus Y to be on the front because as we factor things, we generally move them to the front of what we're working with. But the order makes no difference since multiplication is commutative. We only need X plus Y as a factor one time in this answer. Let's look at another example. For this one, again, there's nothing common to all of the terms. There are four terms, so we believe it's factoring by grouping. Let's put together the front two terms in a set of parentheses and the back two terms in a set of parentheses. Now, out of the front, I notice right off that there's a B that's part of each thing that can be factored out. When I divide both of these parts by B, I'm left with an X plus 1. We saw on the last problem that whatever is here, I need the same thing in a set of parentheses over here in order to make our factoring by grouping work. So instead of thinking about how does this part factor, let's just take this X plus 1 and copy it over here so that the X plus 1s are going to match. Now I can figure out what needs to go in front, what needs to be divided out by just dividing the last part here by the last part there. C divided by 1 gives me C, so it must be a C that I needed to factor out. Since these X plus 1s match each other, we can factor one more time. Let's take X plus 1 to the front and divide each part by X plus 1. Dividing here leaves us a B. Dividing there leaves us a C. And there is our factored form. Now, doing it this way is a good idea when you get harder problems. Whatever you had here needs to match whatever is there. And as you get a harder problem like the one that we have next, it'll help to get that back part factored. I've again noticed nothing common to all four terms. There are four terms, so I've grouped together the front two and the back two. Notice that the minus sign on the third term needs to go inside the parentheses. If it's not inside the parentheses, then it would change the sign back here, and you don't want to do that. So if you've got a negative sign on that third term, put it in the parentheses. Out of the front set of parentheses, we can factor out a 3, leaving an X plus Y. Just like before, if I've got x plus y here, I know I need to have it over here. To figure out what's going to go in front, let's divide this part by the y that is on the back here. Negative by divided by y, those y's are going to cancel, and I would be left with a negative b. So it's negative b that needs to go out in front of our second set of parentheses. Since these x plus y's match, we can factor x plus y out. That leaves a 3 from the front and a minus b from the back. It is much easier for us to figure out what's going to go there by dividing this back part here by the back part there, making sure that these things match. They must match in order for factoring by grouping to work. If they don't match, then we'll go back to the original problem and move the terms around until we can make them match. First thing to do is look for something common. Second, count the number of terms. If there are 4, factor by grouping.